Good afternoon, and welcome to the virtual RLS Advocacy Week Q&A, where we will be answering some burning questions you may have about participating in virtual RLS Advocacy Week. With us today is Philip Goglis II, the Foundation's Washington representative, and he will be answering your questions about RLS Advocacy Week. Thank you for being with us here today, Phil.
Thanks, Clara, and thank you everybody for participating in virtual advocacy.
Let's dive into the questions. Are congressional offices receptive to hearing from us at this time of the year?
Yes, congressional offices are receptive year-round to hear from their constituents. They're sent here to Washington to represent your interests and to work on your behalf. So it's never a bad time to engage with Congress. It's especially critical now because a number of our priorities are related to the appropriations process, which is currently going on in Congress. So it's very timely that the community is connecting with their members of Congress and their offices now.
Awesome. COVID cases have gone down in my state. Would it be best to go into my local office?
So that is really a question that you'll have to do some research on about what your local restrictions are, if there are any. Clara, I know, is in Texas where things are a lot less restrictive than here in Washington, D.C. So we encourage you to, when you call your local office, you can ask that question or what's the best way to meet, but it would depend on where you are because, folks in some states might be under tighter restrictions currently than others.
Great. I sent an email, but I haven't heard back from my legislator's office yet. When should I follow up?
So because it's the time of year where there's just a lot going on in Congress, and because we still are in a situation where the pandemic is still happening and you have folks who are working remotely or different standards for different offices depending on who and where they are, the general rule or timeline is, this week is our week of advocacy. And if you connect with your offices and you send an email, wait about 2 weeks. If you haven't heard from them, a 2-week time frame is generally a good time to follow up with them and, check in. There are a lot of staffers who get a lot of emails on a daily basis. I remember when I worked on the Hill, sometimes it'd take you a day or two to get through your entire inbox. And then if you add, some things that are happening with your boss or things like that. So it just may take a little time. So we encourage everybody to have some patience and, you may hear back right away. You may not hear back for a few weeks. And I'll say that there are a number of folks who are congressional staffers who I know very well, and I've known them for many years, and it takes them a while to get back in touch with me, even though, we know each other very well. So just be patient and you can expect that you will hear back. It just may take some time, but, definitely follow up after 2 weeks if you haven't heard anything. And don't be afraid to, let us know as well if you emailed your senator and you haven't heard back from them or you have heard back from them. All that feedback is important for us.
Why is it recommended to call and/or email my representative rather than send a letter?
So calling and emailing gets the information to staff a lot faster than if you were to send a letter. When I was a Hill staffer, there were a few times where people would call the office and would be not so happy with me because they said that I haven't answered their letter and I never received their letter because it takes a while to get physical mail to the Capitol and to the offices. Usually it's about a month. So we encourage folks to make the call, to email, because that information, you can get to them right away. Sending the snail mail, through USPS is some of that takes a little bit longer because of some security protocols.
That's a great question. How can we stay informed about legislation affecting the RLS community?
So I encourage all of you to sign up for updates from the RLS Foundation. They are the best resource to receive updates about different legislation, about what's happening here in DC periodically throughout the year. I know that I write a little summary of the work that we've been doing here in DC and what's happening. So I can't stress it enough to connect with the foundation and sign up for eFriends. Clara's going to correct me if I say any of this wrong, but eFriends and Night Walkers and all of the other resources that are available to you. So that way, you can make sure that you're up to date on everything that's going on.
Yes, eFriends is definitely the best way to stay in touch with us, especially about advocacy work. Let's see, when is the best time for me to take action?
So again, advocacy goes year round. What we're doing this week is having a targeted engagement with our advocacy community. But we also understand that this week may not be the best for everybody. So we encourage everybody to use the materials that have been crafted and provided as a resource. And if it's this week or next week or 2 weeks from now, again, what our goal is for you to engage with your members of Congress, develop key relationships with them, and develop those long-term relationships where we're able to follow up with them throughout the year on any number of our priorities.
Awesome. This next question's for me, so I'll read it. If I need help on virtual Hill Day, virtual RLS Advocacy Week, who can I contact for assistance? And you will actually be contacting me. My email is clara@rls.org, and I'll be happy to help you out. So back to you, Phil. If I call or email my representatives, what are the 3 most important points I should make to help RLS?
So the most important point to make and the most important piece of information to share is your story. All of the information that we've compiled together has our policy recommendations, has specific requests, and goes into detail about why we are requesting what we are requesting. But the main priority for you is to share your RLS story. What has your journey been? What has your experience been as a patient, as a caregiver, as a loved one? My work here in Washington as the foundation's representative, I could walk into every Senate office, I could walk into every House office and talk to them about why it's important that they fund NIH, why it's important that they, list sleep disorders in the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed medical research program, why it's important that they, support key funding at CDC. One thing they will always ask me is, are there any constituents that would benefit from these federal programs? And they want to hear from you. So sharing your RLS story, your experience, your journey is what really makes a difference. Don't worry about having to memorize any of the policy aspects. The information is there for you to know, but don't get hung up on having to memorize all of that for the sake of not, sharing your story. That's what's most important. And of course, we're asking everybody to follow up with us, let us know how the meetings went. Was there any feedback you received from offices? So definitely fill out that survey. And this way we're able to follow up if you let us know, you met with one of your senator's offices and you spent 20 minutes sharing your story and answering questions from the staffer about your journey, and you didn't have time to mention the request. That's fine. Let us know who you met with. We'll follow up with them to make sure they have the right information.
Yes, that's super important. Like we always say, you're the expert in your story. So, and we're more, or I guess you are, Phil, more the expert on the policy and the legislation on that. So it's really important to just really make your point and tell your story the best you can. What are some of the successes of the RLS Foundation's public policy initiative? How can RLS community members help to increase outreach for RLS?
So last year, we planned on having an in-person Hill Day here in Washington, and we had to adapt because of the pandemic. And we successfully had a robust advocacy campaign last April, And then last September had a great awareness campaign where our community was engaged with their members of Congress, educating them about RLS and raising awareness. As a result of the work of our advocates, one of the specific priorities that we were supporting last year was the creation of a chronic diseases education and awareness program at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Last year was the first time that program received funding for $1.5 million. We are asking for that program to be increased in FY 2022 to $5 million. But because of the work of our advocates, we were successful with the larger chronic disease community to have that program established. We also were successful in advocating for increased NIH funding for the continued inclusion of sleep disorders in the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed medical research program, as well as $5 million for the neurological surveillance program at CDC as well. So because of our advocacy work, we have been successful in increasing the ability for federal agencies to provide research funding, to have our researchers be able to apply for specific grants, and for new opportunities to increase education and awareness. So as definitely a kudos to all of you for engaging with your members of Congress. It's because of the work of our advocates that we were able to achieve that. The best way the RLS community can increase outreach is to engage with your members of Congress, raise awareness, educate them. The more members of Congress are pushing for what our key priorities are, the more likely we're able to see them advance through the legislative process. And the more congressional members that we're able to develop into champions, the easier it is for us to go to the Hill and advance key priorities across the legislative spectrum.
Awesome. How can I ensure my message is effective?
So I can never say this enough. The most important thing that you can share is your story. Your story is really what is the most effective messaging that we have. We talk about funding for NIH, we talk about billions of dollars, we talk about other programs across federal agencies. What really makes a difference to staffers is to hear that personal connection, to understand the translation of how the investment from the federal government really does make a difference in individual lives, or why more investment is needed. So your message is truly effective by just sharing your story and participating, because you're giving a voice to the entire community and you're educating individuals who may have never heard of RLS, who don't understand what it's like for patients, and you're providing that voice to them, which really does help them understand why it's important to support these priorities.
Awesome. So what should I do if my congressperson's voicemail is full?
So you may see that either their voicemails are full or their lines are busy, or you run into different issues when you're trying to get in touch with them. Suggestion is, definitely pack your patience, but don't give up. Don't be discouraged if you call and the office voicemail is full. If you call them on Monday and the voicemail is full, call them again on Tuesday. If it's still full, call them again on Wednesday. Don't be discouraged if you're not able to get through on the first try. Keep going. You should have an expectation that you will be able to connect with them, but definitely look as well if you are in Texas, for example, and let's say you're in Austin and you're trying to connect with Senator Cornyn's office. You're calling his Austin district office, but you're not getting through. You're getting voicemail full. Feel free to go look up his number for his office in Houston or another part of the state and call there and, say that you're trying to get in touch with somebody, and, you called the office that's closest to you, but the mailbox was full or you weren't able to get through. So definitely, utilize their website, what offices they have, where they have them, and just be persistent.
That's a great suggestion about actually calling the other offices. I didn't think of that. Awesome. How should I handle requests for additional information on RLS?
So again, because we encourage everybody to be an expert in their story and not to worry about the policy components. There are situations where a staffer might ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, and that's perfectly okay. You can let them know, I don't know, but I will find out the information for you and get it to you. That's the importance of the survey, to let us know. I met with Clara and she asked me these 3 questions that I didn't know the answer to, but if we could get them to her, that would be helpful. And then, we'll see that on the survey and we'll be able to say, hi, Clara, I know that you met with some of our advocates from the RLS community and you had some specific questions. Here are the answers to your questions. Please let me know if you have anything else further. I can't stress enough how important that follow-up survey is, to just let us know how things went, because it does provide us the opportunity for meaningful follow-up.
And here's another question for me. Do I have to be an RLS Foundation member to participate in virtual RLS Advocacy Week? And that is a no. We invite the whole RLS community to participate. We really want to amplify our voices. So anyone who is willing to participate, we highly encourage you to. Do I need to be an expert to be an effective advocate for RLS?
No, you don't. We provided the materials for you to follow that have the technical components and the technical aspects. I encourage you to go back and watch the training videos that were recorded, which are chock full of information about how to make an effective visit, how to contact Congress, some background on Schoolhouse Rock, Civics 101, and review of the issues. So there's a lot of information that's provided for you. Don't feel like you have to absorb all of it. All of that information is provided as reference. Of course, be that expert in your story. We do go over on how to craft your personal story, some helpful hints in bringing that together. But again, you're an expert in your experience, in your story. That's what we want you to focus on. Any of the other aspects, that's what we're here for. So just keep in touch with us and let us know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, Phil. You can learn more about Virtual RLS Advocacy Week by visiting our webpage, www.rls.org/advocacy. Thank you again for sharing your time with us today, Phil.
Thanks, everybody, and good luck.